Max Verstappen will be looking to take the momentum from his sprint race victory last night into the main race of the US Grand Prix happening tonight. The Formula One world champion adding another win for the season in Austin, Texas, beating 8-time world champion Sir Lewis Hamilton. The Belgian Dutchman, however, will start today's race in 6th place after being penalized for exceeding speed limits in qualifying on Friday. Charles Leclerc sits in pole position ahead of Hamilton. Joining me now to look ahead to this race tonight is Motorzar TV founder and our regular Formula One analyst, Lufefe Maekiso. Lufefe, always a pleasure having you in studio. Let's start off with Verstappen's penalty. What exactly does it mean that he exceeded speed limits on turn 19?
Well, what happens is there are track limits at certain corners, which we've seen being implemented so strictly in the last couple of Grand Prix. So if all 4 of your tires are off the asphalt, then you are seen to have exceeded track limits, therefore gaining a lasting advantage.
I mean, they'll probably call it a stupid question, but is that going to hinder what we expect from him in this particular race, that he will walk away with the victory, or have these upgrades that Mercedes have put in place going to show us something different? Will McLaren maybe even do what we've seen them do in the last couple of Grand Prix? Will it be a sure Verstappen victory?
It's hard to say. I mean, even Ferrari, they're looking good this weekend. But if you look at the race pace based on the sample that we got from the sprint yesterday, then they're still a bit behind, both Ferrari and McLaren. I think the closest team to Red Bull this weekend is Mercedes, or at least the Mercedes of Sir Lewis Hamilton.
What's George Russell doing wrong that Hamilton is getting right? Because it seems Russell is not clicking with this car at the moment following its upgrades, because he's been found wanting.
Yeah, that's true. He's been struggling this weekend, but I think it has to be said that Sir Lewis is tremendous at the circuit of the Americas. So he's already said that it's one of his favorite tracks. So maybe Russell is struggling because he's not dialed in with the circuit in the same way that his teammate is.
Now, here's something that I've been thinking about and pondering for a little while now. And I think you and I have spoken about it, maybe not even at length, but does Sergio Perez still have a seat next year?
I don't think so. No. For me, if you remember in our last interview, I said he's 1 foot out the door. Then he had a terrible race after that. So for me, if you look at all the bickering that's happening at Red Bull right now, I mean, there's a lot of division between Helmut Marko, there's a power struggle with Christian Horner, and all the things that Marko has allegedly said about Sergio Perez. For me, I feel as though he's got these last 5 races to try and retain the seat for next season. Otherwise, it's curtains for him.
And if he doesn't, who do you bring in? You're Christian Horner, you're the man that makes the call, you're the hire and fire. Who do you bring in?
I would take a risk on Liam Lawson. He did really well in the 3 races that he did for AlphaTauri. Of course, with Daniel Ricciardo being nailed down to a contract with AlphaTauri for next season, I think he would have been the first option. But since that's been concluded, I think it can only be Liam Lawson. However, there are rumors linking Lando Norris with a surprise move maybe from McLaren to Red Bull, which I believe would be a mistake on his part, because McLaren are on the up and he's the team leader there. So the dynamic of what will happen when he joins, if he were to join Red Bull, I think it's a bit tricky for him, because for me, he's not at the level of Max Verstappen in terms of driving.
Let's play on that hypothesis. Let's say Lando does go to Red Bull, right? McLaren has an open seat. McLaren have tried Carlos Sainz, who himself wasn't pushed out. He left because he wanted bigger things for himself with Ferrari. There was Daniel Ricciardo, who didn't have the best of time at McLaren. I mean, it wasn't as worse as it was at Renault, but he didn't have the best of time there either. Who do you put into the seat? Firstly, who becomes the McLaren team lead now that Lando's gone? And then who comes in to replace Lando?
I would say Checo might have a chance there. Or if he doesn't, he can get Lance Stroll seated at Aston Martin, because for a change that seems under fire. But I would say McLaren would be looking for an experienced driver. Checo, you remember, he did drive for McLaren before. He replaced Sir Lewis at McLaren in 2013. So maybe the second coming, maybe something of a success story for him.
All right, let's look ahead to the next season, Fluffy. We are done with 2023. It's now a matter of you're now having to start planning for the new campaign. let's talk about the teams that we know will probably try to launch some kind of a fight. And I'll even add Aston Martin in there because at the beginning of the season, you know,
they were flying.
They were flying. They were doing some amazing things. So you've got Red Bull, you've got Mercedes, you've got Ferrari, you've got McLaren, and you've got Aston Martin. What needs to be done by these teams to ensure Red Bull that they maintain their dominance, Mercedes that they get back to the top where everybody knows them, Ferrari that they also just, you know, roll the years back again, Aston Martin that they show that they're not just a flimsy team that is trying to bring in a Fernando Alonso to try and help them to a couple of race wins. What needs to be done by these major teams to ensure that we have a different 2024 campaign?
Okay, let's start with Red Bull. Red Bull just need to continue doing what they've been doing. They did say maybe 3-4 races ago that they've already got one eye on next year's car. So I expect them to come out guns blazing for the 2024 season. I don't expect anybody to be on par with them at Bahrain in March. Then we look at Ferrari. Ferrari, for me, they've been there or thereabouts, eh? I mean, we've had these discussions ongoing in these interviews. They've been there or thereabouts. I think there's not much that needs to be done there. Their strategies, I think they're better this season. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
So Ferrari needs to keep doing what they're doing and obviously keep focusing on the strategy calls, etc. Mercedes, ever since we saw the flaw of the Red Bull, when Sergio Perez's one was pulled up and we saw the underside. Seemingly, the secret to Red Bull's success lies a lot on the floor. Because now Mercedes have brought upgrades to their floor, and you've seen them, I would say, leapfrog Ferrari, possibly even McLaren for this race weekend. So there's something there with that floor.
McLaren, do you do anything different? They've got an Oscar Piastri that's not looking like he's a fluke. They're obviously going to, let's say Lando stays, which I would put my money on him staying. They've proven, those two, that they can do something, young as they are. McLaren, what does Zach Brown change?
I think he needs to stop the number one, number two driver. You know, when you're a chasing team, you don't need to have a number one, number two. What you need is maximum output from both your drivers. So if you start controlling now to say Lando's number one and Oscar must support him, then you're not getting the maximum performance out of both drivers. So I think that, especially now with Oscar having signed a new contract till 2026, that they should just treat their drivers equally. If you're giving this one upgrades, you give this one upgrades from race one.
Parting shot. Will Sir Lewis Hamilton win a race this season, or are we having another barren campaign?
Look, today's got a good chance.
Yeah.
Like, truth be told, I think Mercedes this weekend, for the first time, is quicker both than McLaren and Ferrari. He's sitting third on the grid. Max is sixth, but Max can fly through the traffic. And so, I mean, it just depends how he gets off the line at the start. If he's able to overtake both those cars, then he'll have a bit of time to try build a lead, because we saw that he and Max yesterday in the sprint pulled away from Charles Leclerc, who finished third.
Right. Which part of the world is Motozar TV doing a watch-along today? Are you doing it because the race is quite late this evening?
Yes, every race we're doing a watch-along. We're out in 4 ways. You can see it on our socials, Motozar_TV.
Fantastic. So it's always a pleasure having you in studio. We'll chat again the next race. Of course, we are in the Americas in the next couple of races in Formula One, so you'll definitely be chatting all things Formula One with Lufefe a little later on in the afternoon. But that's